So a lot of people seeing Cliff, they see the beautiful man bun. They see the guy's ripped like I don't even know what he is. He's a machine. He went to Brown, elite university. He's a startup, Forbes under 30 under 30. You might think that this guy was probably born to an elite family and he's like silver spoon type of guy. Has life been as easy as it looks, Cliff?
Well, life's been wonderful, mainly because I do come from like a super loving family with incredible parents, and I'm the oldest of 5 incredible kids. But no, that definitely had my fair share of challenges. Predominantly among those is dyslexia, which is how kind of Speechify came to be.
How do you deal with discomfort? What do you do to challenge yourself to get out of your comfort zone? Is getting out of your comfort zone a virtue?
Yes, huge virtue for me.
Why?
It's the place that you grow the most. So when I was 17, I read this great book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Sure.
And in this book, he has a bunch of what he called comfort challenges. And so it's everything from like when you're walking down the street and someone's bigger than you, like stare them down. And then if they come to you, be like, oh, sorry, you look like a friend of mine. I was trying to figure out who you were. Or like go to a mall and ask out everybody from the opposite sex.
Or the same sex.
Yes.
Or go to a Starbucks and just lie down on the ground for like 15 seconds and just give yourself a timeout. Like do things that are uncomfortable.
Did you do any of that?
I did all of them.
Oh, wow.
All of them, multiple times.
Okay, so the advice to lawyers and professionals out there who are so uncomfortable getting out of your comfort zone is to start off by at least reading Tim Ferriss. And
Yes, highly recommend that book. Another one that is like more socially acceptable is next time you're at a Starbucks or like any small coffee shop and you buy some coffee, ask for a 10% discount.
I love that.
Yeah.
We're all about discounts.
We're all about the discounts. And like the worst that'll happen is you'll get a no. And you should love no, because for every like 99 no's you'll get one yes.
I love it. Why are you, as you put it, one of the happiest people that you have ever met?
Yeah. So if you look at equations for how to break down happiness in people, expectations minus reality equals kind of how you feel about things. And for me, I ended up in the situation where when I was young, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, I could not learn how to read for the life of me. And I really wanted to be like, I wanted to be a billionaire and a pop star and Prime Minister of Israel. And I realized that like for at least 2 of these things, I needed to know how to read. And my dad told me like, look, like to be successful, you have to learn how to read. And so I tried and it didn't work, to the point where I would lie to my parents that I was reading, and I would sit and I would fake read because it was so painful for me to read.
And wait, at this point, you didn't know that you had dyslexia, or you did?
Didn't know I had dyslexia.
Got it.
And so my teachers thought I was like not that sharp and like just being lazy. And I was like trying so hard. And luckily, I came from an environment where I got like a ton of unconditional love, and I felt a super high amount of self-worth, even though the reality in school was you are failing at the most important thing that you're supposed to do. So I was like, no, I'm awesome. There is just a problem in my perception to the outside world and how I'm operating on this thing. So I'm just going to work until I figure out the solution.
That must have been so frustrating though.
It was, but I had my eyes on the prize of what I wanted to have. And I think I'm very, very lucky that I developed that when I was like 7 years old.
And is this you lived in Israel?
In Israel. So this is reading Hebrew.
Got it.
And if you look at it, 30% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic, 40% of like billionaire, wildly successful entrepreneurs are dyslexic.
Wow, I did not know that.
But also like 50% of people in like the prison system are dyslexic, right?
Wow.
And so it's like this super strong like survival of the fittest situation where you either build this incredible resiliency or the system fails you and you fall through the cracks. So I ended up earning all the academic success that I got because I had to work really, really hard at this thing. And I got to the point where I could read, but never to a fast enough degree. And then I fell in love with audiobooks. So I listened to 2 audiobooks a week. And then when that wasn't enough, because like most research PDFs you're supposed to read, like handouts in school, textbooks don't have an audiobook. So I ended up building my own software system to let me do it. I had to work like 2-3 times as hard as everybody else to get the results that I was looking for. And so when I got to college, I very much felt that I earned it. I also was paying for college out of my own pocket. And I just have this huge feeling of personal agency around my life, whether it comes to where I live or who my friends are and what I'm working on. Like I always feel that I have control about what's going on around me, whether it be my body, everything. And I very much subscribe to the idea that there's no reason to sacrifice short-term happiness or bliss for long-term success. You can have both of them at the same time. And so there's pillars in my life that make me happy. So I make sure to fill those pillars. And so I'm happy on the journey to the thing that I'm seeking, not because I achieved the thing that I'm going for. And often I'll get to a certain point and I won't achieve the goal that I wanted. And then I'll adjust it. But along the way, I'm happy.
So a lot of people they let people, places, and things get in the way of their happiness. And that goes to your personal agency point. What's your advice to people who haven't figured this personal agency thing out? How do you change your mindset around personal agency and understanding that you're responsible for your happiness?
Yeah. So there's a really good book by Nietzsche called Thus Spoke Zarathustra. And he talks about this guy and he gives this good story. And his principle is you should not accept your principles for your family, your friends, the pulpit. You should develop your own values in the world. And that's so critical for happiness. And so for me, my values have been developed from the 100 books I read every year, from the like social experiments I've done and the things that I've like observed around the world around me, like a scientist, and from the things that from inside of me make me happy. And those are the things that I prioritize. And those are the values that are important to me.
What about when somebody's a jerk to you? How does it like where do you find challenges and how do you overcome them when it comes to your personal agency?
Yeah, that's a good question. So very rarely are people jerks to me, and I'm very lucky to be in that situation, but usually it's because I'm nice to all the people around me. But I'll give you the most recent example of someone being a jerk to me. Recently, we started running a lot of ads for Speechify on Instagram and Facebook, and that results in like tens of millions of people learning about Speechify every single day. And I kid you not, half of the comments are hate, which is so surprising because this is an app that like is so productive, helps kids with disabilities. People are like, oh my God, this is so lazy. This is the worst app ever. You're destroying the world, blah, blah, blah. Like, and I'm like, what are these people thinking? And so I succeeded in shifting my reaction to that because what I did is like, I obviously like, I responded.
Because you also knew that you weren't going to necessarily be able to shift their opinions.
Right. And I definitely was not going to shift my opinion that this app is a terrible idea and it's lazy. And here's what I learned. Every time I responded to any of the haters, their hearts would melt and they'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe that you responded to my message. And like, they'd go and be my biggest supporters. They'd like all my photos on Instagram, like they'd comment on my stuff.
They just want the attention.
They just wanted the attention. And if you go and look at the other comments that these people leave on other people's stuff, like it's also all hate. And so what you need to realize is like when someone's being a jerk to you, you have to approach it with like the biggest amount of compassion possible. So that's one situation that you can face a jerk.
What about with somebody who like you're intimate with, either a spouse or a close friend, and you're having a hard time getting over, I would just, maybe just a tough situation with intimate people, maybe in your immediate family.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of how did you get over the fear of doing backflips in front of audiences? Because here's what used to happen. I was like, a backflip is the coolest thing that I can do where you don't need to say anything about me and I can like demonstrate physical dominance and that I'm awesome. and everybody's attention is on me and like I'm already giving value to people. So I should start my speeches that way. And so I did it. And I would go up and I'd be like, hi, backflip. My name is Cliff. And my sisters would roast me for this. They'd be like, Cliff,
sisters are good for that.
Oh, sisters are great for that. And like when I was young, if I would like spend too long looking in the mirror, my sister Geffen would be like, oh my God, Cliff, you're so vain. Like stop, blah, blah, blah. And she'd like try to put me down a notch, which is like important for humility and stuff. But also, I thought it was a very good thing for me to learn how to start a speech with a backflip. But Geffen was very adamant. Cliff, you should not start a speech with a backflip.
Is that Farsi or Hebrew?
Geffen is in Hebrew.
Okay.
But we're half Iranian, half British.
Oh, I'm Persian.
There we go.
But I was like, no, I should start a speech with a backflip. But she was like, it's so embarrassing. Like it has nothing to do with what you're talking about. But no, it worked. So I just workshopped it until I figured out how to start a speech smoothly with a backflip.
And so wait, but how did your conversation with your sister change?
So she's super supportive. She's like the best person ever. But really the thing was, I think about it from a meta perspective. I'm not like getting involved in like my emotions or hurt, whatever. Like I understand my objective. I understand her objective. And I'm like, yes, I understand your input, but actually I'm not updating my value on this thing because I don't agree with this. So I explained to her my thought process.
Well, isn't that part of like your whole theory of having your own value system?
That's right. And we can go deeper into like how I run that. But then I told her, okay, I hear you. So the first thing you do is you repeat back to them what they tell you. It's so critical because then people feel heard. Yep. And that's why you have the reaction of the haters online. Did you listen to the
negotiating like your life depends on it?
Never Split the Difference?
Yes,
absolutely. Really good. There's another system called Conscious Leadership Group, which also talks about this topic. And if you make people feel heard, it makes a world of difference for everything. And so the second she feels heard, she doesn't need to repeat herself in the argument again because she understands because I repeated to her in my own words what she was saying. And the second thing that I say is, I understand what you're saying. This is what you're saying. I don't agree with this for the following reasons. I'm open to continue having a conversation about this, but I would like to do a backflip. can you help me come up with solutions to how I can do a backflip in this thing? And so you're going from being on opposite sides of the table to now we're both on the same side of the table, observing the problem together and workshopping a solution. And indeed, maybe part of the reason you invited me on this podcast is because you saw me give a talk and I did a backflip at the beginning. And what'll happen is I'll go places and people will be like, oh my God, you gave a talk in my class 6 years ago. I don't remember what you talked about, probably entrepreneurship, but you did a backflip in the beginning.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you backflips, you have a ton of energy. You've created 40 apps. You're under 20, what are you, you're 25?
25.
You're 25 years old, 40 apps. You're ripped like I don't even know.
Iron Man.
And
I
it's
just
also
finished
like,
Robert Downey
it's
Jr.'s
also like
biography.
really balanced too.
Wow.
You're not like one of those dudes who can't move their necks. Like you just have a great whole deal going on. Arian's laughing.
This is my favorite podcast ever.
So you got a lot of energy. There are people out there that don't have like to get out of bed to get to work. That's assuming they have a job.
Yeah.
It's legitimately incredibly hard for them. Have you ever had a challenge with energy?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah.
And so what's your advice to people who are at the opposite end of the spectrum? They see you and they're like, yeah, that's cool. I just can't ever do that.
Yeah. So I had two specific situations I can think of in my life where I was really lacking energy. One of them was the one internship I ever had. So junior year after college, I had an internship working for this tech company. I was working as a product manager. And I took this job because they described it as one thing. And when I got there, it was a completely different thing. And to be honest, I knew that I could do my manager and her manager and her manager's job better than all of them. And I really contemplating leaving, even though it was like super nice people, really smart, carrot juice on tap, everything you want. And I was really down.
Juice. How could you forget the carrot
Kombucha,
juice?
everything.
What about celery juice, the new trend?
Oh, I didn't have that. Maybe that's why I left. And so I was really frustrated with this. And this also validated to me the assumption, the hypothesis that I was working with at the time, which is I should be doing 100% my own thing after I graduate. I should not be working for a company. And that was like, check, definitely true. And so I was really frustrated. And I was doubly frustrated because there was no way that I could easily go and do my own thing once I graduated because I had all this student debt. And so I was like, okay, I'm therefore extremely demotivated to go to this job. And in fact, I would go to this job and I was not motivated to do any of the work. And the thing is, when you're in this like cycle of corporate slavery, like if you're someone like me and you like to stay up late just because that's how my body works, I'll realistically fall asleep at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. I'll wake up at 6 a.m. I'll like take public transit to the office, and then I'll have the energy to work for maybe like 2-3 hours. And then I kind of like don't feel like working because just like I'm not on that energy wavelength, but I still have to sit there at my desk. And it's like detention, but for adults. And most people live in this way their entire life.
That is, I think that
Amen.
describes like a huge portion of the population and most of lawyers.
Exactly. And here's the worst part. The best way to get rid of all your energy and make yourself feel like terribly is to force yourself to do something that you don't want for an extended period of time.
Oh my God.
So if you search how to
100%.
file a provisional patent, the first video on YouTube is me explaining how to file a provisional patent. And I made that video because it took so much energy for me to write that patent. And in fact, I had to have, like, I drove to a Starbucks, asked my sister to drive the car away from Starbucks and only pick me up at the end of the day once the patent was finished. And so I was like, nah, I need to make this easier for other people. It's like the system was designed by like a deranged DMV employee that tried to make it as difficult as possible. And so once you suck all the energy out of you like that and you go home, all you want is to veg out. So the only thing you could do is watch Netflix. You can't go to the gym. You can't do any of this stuff. And then finally you go to sleep again late, and then you're just perpetually exhausted. So you have to figure out a way, again, look at it from a meta perspective. How do I break the cycle? So, and then find the motivation in there. So for me, the motivation was, okay, first of all, I'm going to just, again, I already was ready to quit. So I was like, I'm going to refuse to do the work that I'm given. I'm going to start working on this own project. I recruited other engineers from other portions of the company to join my initiative that was not approved of by my manager. Eventually, the whole division that I was part of in the company actually shut down, except for this project that was already making the company revenue. So that was one solution there. The second solution was, before I got the other engineers to join me, I would just teach myself other things that I found interesting that was somewhat relevant to the job on the job. The second problem was, how do I deal with this, like wanting to do my own thing after graduation? And so I just put myself on this ridiculous regime where I would do this work. I would go home. I was freelance as an iOS developer from like 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. I'd go on a run, I'd come back, and then I'd apply to scholarships full time. And later we'll go into the process that I implemented for that. But I had like this goal and I was hurtling towards this goal.
So if you had to break down just how do you get from being exhausted, miserable
Make a
every
plan.
day to get to the place that you're at right now, what are some key components of that?
Okay, so the key component is, number one, open a Google spreadsheet doc and write down like the 5 areas of your life that are your top goals. Like really being clear about what your like top goals in life is so important. And if you don't know what the things that you want are, find the people in the world that you admire the most, that you want your life to be like theirs, and be like, what is it about their lives that I love so much? And then decide, okay, I want that, I want that, I want that. And then write like your age, for example. So I'm like 25. I started doing this when I was like 14. What are the subcategory goals that are within each category, and what do you need to do in order to achieve those goals? And then just like lock onto those things and don't give up until you get them. Like I did when I was 6, when I got the backflip. Like the only thing that was important was I needed to learn how to read, and I needed to know how to do a backflip, and everything else was a distraction.
Speaking of reading, you make a big deal about reading, read this, read that, read. Why should we care about reading?
So like my dad said, to be successful, you need to know how to read. But realistically, I never read with my eyes. I always read with my ears. And so,
by the way, have you figured out whether scientifically you could retain more information through reading than listening?
It depends on the person.
One way or the other.
Some people are auditory learners. Some people are visual learners. Realistically, if you do both at the same time, you're always going to have more comprehension and more attention. What most people don't realize is if you practice, you can train yourself to listen faster. So the average person in the United States reads like a physical book at 200 words per minute. They'll read a digital text at 180 words per minute. I listen at 700 words per minute. And it's just because I built up that ability over time. A college professor will read on average at like 500 words per minute, like an Ivy League school. And so I imagine that for most lawyers, that's roughly the speed you guys go at. When I was young, really wanted to be a lawyer.
Debatable.
Yeah.
Like when I was in preschool, I really wanted to be a lawyer because my dad was a lawyer. But he was like, no, you don't want to be a lawyer.
Your dad's a smart guy.
And especially when I realized that this whole reading thing is not my shtick, I was like, okay, you're right. I don't want to be a lawyer. But now actually I realistically, I read a ton of contracts with Speechify, and it would not be a problem anymore because this thing helps me so much. But here's how I see it. Knowledge is like a tree. You have the trunk, which is like what you learn in like elementary school and from your parents, etc. And you have all these branches. And if you're exposed to a new leaf of information, if you don't have a branch for it to land on, it floats away. What you do by reading books is you're fleshing out this tree. It's like Google Maps, where like if you zoom in super deep, some places are pixelated, some places are not. You want your information to be as rich as possible. And so this is why it's sometimes useful to reread books, because you'll build a new branch, and then when you reread it again, those leaves that you missed last time will get added. And you are building this mental model of the universe. And using this mental model of the universe, you make decisions. And those decisions are what maps out your life and how your life ends up being. It's how you determine what your goals are, how you figure out the hacks in the system of how to get to your goals faster, etc. And it's what allows you to shape who you are. When I was graduating school, I wrote this like 30-page paper about my worldviews. And I realized that most of them, other than my parents, were impacted by the books that I'd read and my experience overcoming dyslexia. And like the books that I read, like that's who I am. You know how people say you are the average of your 5 best friends?
Mm-hmm.
So
you're the average of your the last 5 books you read?
Not even that. You're just like the average of the last like 100 books you read. Like Benjamin
that's in law, they call that lax foundation, assuming facts not in evidence, meaning a lot of people have not read anything close to 100 books. It's a hard thing for you to believe, but like, I'll just be honest, myself, before I started listening to Audible last year, I can count on 2 hands how many books I read in my entire life other than law related stuff. So
wow.
Did you read all your legal books in law school?
No, absolutely not.
So if you had this challenge with reading, why'd you go be a lawyer?
I don't know. I love reading. It's just I'm very picky with what I read, and this is getting out of my comfort zone. I started listening to Audible. I saw you post a bunch of pictures of all your favorite books. I'm starting to read. I'm starting to listen to those. What do you call it? So what do you call it? It's instead of reading. Do you call it?
Speechify.
Okay.
Speechify is a verb.
There you go. So I speechify my books now. And so when you
wait, how did you get into Audible? Like,
how did I get into
what
Audible?
made you start listening to audiobooks?
So what happened was,
it's the biggest level up thing any person can do is starting to consume books en masse. How did you start?
It is. I started by I felt stuck. I felt like an entrepreneur, positive, hopeful person stuck in a lawyer's body.
Ooh,
yeah,
well described.
And I would hear people who inspired me. I think it could have been you. It honestly could have been you. I'm not even joking. I think I may have heard you on a podcast talking about Speechify. It could have been you. And I was like, what are we going to try first? And I did like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for whatever fault it has, I thought it was
a great entry.
Amazing. It was a great opening book to listening to books. And so, yeah, that's how I got into it. And then it's great. I still need to do it. I still want to do it a lot more.
Yeah.
And so while we're on the topic of Speechify and Audible books, you created so many products. I've heard about a lot of the products you've created, and they all sound like good ideas. What made you land on Speechify as the one that you were going to pour your heart and soul into?
Yeah, so this was a really difficult decision. And for all people who like run their own businesses out there, this is like the most difficult thing is problem selection. So I luckily had 4 years when I was in school, and I was indeed studying renewable energy engineering. And like everything else in my
old
life,
major.
I took agency around that, and it is an independent concentration because there were a couple of classes I refused to take because they were not useful to me. And so half the classes I took, I also did not have the prerequisites for in college. But Brown has a really easy system where it's a semester, and if you get an A+, A, or A-, it's the same grade. So I would always get a 91 in all my classes. And so once I was like safe, I would pour all my time into side projects. It's like I was like a varsity athlete, except instead of doing like practice and regattas in the weekends or games, I would be working on my startup projects. So initially I built this like 3D printed detachable brakes for longboards and skateboards that I patented, and a payment system, and then a bunch of apps and websites, different things. When I graduated, I was like, okay, I'm working in all these different directions, but the real way to make progress is you focus on one thing and you slam into a brick wall and you crumple, and then you slam into that brick wall again over and over and over until you make real progress. And so I had a hypothesis around what would be the type of thing I wanted to work on. And it was a clever app or website, because I'd built physical and biotech products before and I knew it took too much time, but all the software products that I built just like picked up adoption quickly. Clever app or website with a smart business model that created real value in the world, did not make money off of ads, and would help people who are similar to me. And so I tested a bunch of different things that fell into this category. And I had always wished that I could build something like Audible because it changed my life so much. In fact, when I finished school, I sent an email to the CEO of Audible, and he responded within like 20 minutes with like 6 paragraphs. And we ended up cultivating this wonderful relationship. But Audible was so good, I couldn't come up with a good replacement. And I was like, even more than Audible, I wish I could build a really good screen reader, because I use screen readers a lot, but almost nobody else does. And at a certain point, I started making videos about how I was using text-to-speech, and hundreds of thousands of people would watch these videos, and I get 500 comments in the video saying stuff like, "I'm literally crying. My 4th grader is doing her homework by herself." And then I read this article about the advancement in deep learning as they relate to artificial intelligence. It was like an academic paper. And I was like, wow, this is about to get so good. I'll be able to make voices at the quality of human speech that later will be instantly like creatable. And so I implemented that into software I built for myself. And that's kind of how Speechify came to be. And it solves my own problem. So it works perfectly. And I did this thought experiment. If I was a billionaire right now, what would I spend my time on? And it was obvious to me that the first thing I would do is solve dyslexia. And so this does that. And so though there's other things that I could do that would be more profitable than this, this is also the thing that gives me energy. Yeah,
absolutely. What is the, how many people have you helped?
Oh my God, there's like millions and millions of people who use Speechify.
Wow.
So on an average month, people will listen to more than 1 billion words on Speechify. That's the equivalent of more than 15,000 like first Harry Potter books.
Wow. And then how have you scaled the company? What's been the process of scaling the company?
Yeah. So, the most difficult thing is hiring. And I'm sure that this is true for lawyers as well. And so we're now 26 people who work in Speechify, predominantly engineers. Initially, we hired senior engineers from Apple and Snapchat and other places. Then I had this guy message me from Bulgaria. He was like, hey, and he started like helping me with stuff, and more. Eventually, I got him a visa to come to the United States, and he was just like so much better than other people I'd hired. And I was hiring friends who I had taught computer science to from hackathons. Essentially, I got really good at finding people all over the world who would read Medium articles I made or YouTube videos that I watched and would reach out to me. And maybe I get like 1 or 2 of these messages a day. And I'd give them like a little test challenge. And if they did well on that, I'd give them another test challenge. And if essentially like I couldn't afford not to hire them, I would hire them.
Yeah.
And that's how we ended up with just this amazing team that's worked on this project. And now it's not only an iPhone app, it's an iPad app, a Mac app, an Android app, a web app, a Chrome extension. And it's, used
so
all
cool.
over the world.
So it's actually interesting that you said somebody reached out to you from Bulgaria, because you hear people all the time saying how, I just want to create value. I want to get hired, or I want to show my boss that, I got what it takes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was lucky Benji didn't give me a test before I started.
I did. You just didn't know it.
You're on the test right now. Actually.
Yeah. This has nothing to do with the interview. This is all just a part of the interview.
But so I want to know what advice you have to people entering the workforce and how they can create value.
Yeah. So if you're entering the workforce and you don't want to go work for like a big company, although it applies there too, first of all, find the person at the top of the management structure that actually has the power to make a decision. Never ever like submit a resume into a black hole. Always figure out who is a decision maker, and the most powerful decision maker is usually the CEO. So if you're applying to work at Microsoft, never do that without emailing the CEO of Microsoft. And then everybody on the management chain down to where you are. Send them a good email with 3 sentences that describe why you are an awesome person and 2 sentences describing why you're going to give them value specifically. If you're in an in-person meeting with someone, always ask, what are your top 3 goals right now? And what are your top 2 challenges? And then figure out how you can help them with those things. And then suggest it on the fly if you can come up with an idea, and then they'll give you the resources to help you. And even if you don't ask that, just start doing it. So that's what Simon did, who's this kid from Bulgaria, who like now I got him, like he has a green card now. He's like 22 years old. He can move to the United States.
That's very bold stuff.
And it's because he reached out and started helping. And so the first thing he did was he helped me with this PR hack that I wanted to do. And I sent him the PDF of what I wanted done. I just didn't have time to do it myself. And he did it. And then he noticed that I was working on hiring more and more iOS engineers. So he was like, can I help with that? I was like, I don't know, but let's try. So he did a screen share, and I showed him how I took this Google sheet. I numbered it 1 to 100, and I was going to LinkedIn and Medium and finding people who were good and putting them in the sheet, finding their email, finding their Facebook, reaching out to them. I filled out 5. I went to sleep. I woke up in the morning. The sheet was filled to 100.
Wow.
And then I started emailing them, and he saw how I was emailing them. So I made another email account that also had the name Cliff, and he started emailing them for me. And then I gave him access to my calendar, and he started scheduling those meetings.
Wow.
And then eventually he joined the meetings, and then he saw how I did the meetings, and he would email on my behalf, and then he just started interviewing people for me.
Oh my God.
So he didn't have to do anything ridiculous here. I showed him how to do everything, but he took the initiative and actually did it. So that's the same thing you could do in any job.
It's interesting you say that, because I know sometimes a lot of people don't necessarily have the confidence when they're starting, or, you know, the chutzpah to just go on and do stuff on their own. So do you have any suggestions on how to create that strength so once you start and enter the workforce, you know,
Absolutely.
you can do bold things?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, though I run Speechify and like that's my full-time gig, I'm always looking for other like small businesses that can be started for my siblings, other friends of mine who are like, I want to help them out. So recently I've gotten really into flipping Instagram pages and how much money you can make if you buy ads on like meme pages in Instagram, for example. And I was like, this is really interesting. So then I did a little experiment and I bought some ads and like sold some products on there. And I realized this is really profitable. And so I taught my sister how to do this, my brother how to do this. And I found this Instagram page, had like 10,000 followers. And the guy agreed to sell me a 24-hour post on the page with a link in bio for $5. And I was like, great, this is like a lot of traffic for free. And so the guy started asking me a lot of questions about business. I guess no, turns out he's a 13-year-old boy in Florida.
Oh my God.
So
wow.
It doesn't matter who you are if you're on the internet. Just start.
True
When my little brother was 10 years old, he was really into this video game called Minecraft. It's like you build stuff with Legos.
Mm-hmm.
And he started making graphic design banners for these servers and running these servers. And he started a graphic design agency. And there was one day where he's like, Dad, be quiet. I'm on the phone with a client. Yes. $10 now. $10 later. And then I'll give you the logo. Just start.
That's amazing. Like that audacity. You're a unique, one of a kind business leader. Who did you look at as a business leader and admire the most, and who maybe surprisingly did you admire the least?
Okay. So one person I admire gigantically is Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
Love Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I like consume biographies like a crazy person. So it doesn't matter who it is. I probably read their like full 40-hour biography. Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of a kind, man. He was born in Austria post World War II after like a devastating defeat, had pretty difficult like family life, but he just like was born with this inspiration. He's like, I will go to America. And everyone's like, yeah, right, Arnold, sit down. And he's like, I will be the greatest bodybuilder ever. It's like, okay, Arnold. And he did. And he moved here. And then he proceeded to dominate 4 separate careers. Greatest bodybuilder, highest paid action actor. He became independently wealthy from real estate development. People don't know this before he even got an acting career. And then governor of California, and then like a huge philanthropist, et cetera, et cetera. Huge fan of Arnold. Because he has so much confidence, and he just like, he sets these ridiculous, ambitious goals. Like we said, he sat down and he's like, I don't have energy here in Austria. I want to be there in the United States. And he just found a way to do it. And he found a way to become such a great bodybuilder, even though he didn't have too much finances. He got to the US, he had this ridiculous accent, he didn't speak English. He was the only bodybuilder in Venice Beach who enrolled himself in night classes, got himself through college, took accent reduction classes, started a real estate business, married a Kennedy, did all this stuff just because
wild.
He's wild.
It's unreal. Wait, but who is your least admired leader?
So I actually
or do you want to even?
No.
Do you want to just?
I really dislike Steve Jobs.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
That's tell us.
So, like I said, the one rule: do no harm. Steve Jobs would regularly shout at people until they cried. He would make his employees not go to their own children's births. Really left the girl he got pregnant with, Lisa, hanging. Just completely unacceptable behavior in my book. And so the number one sin for me is if you knock somebody else down. It makes no sense to do that. And so in the same way that I don't believe that there's a reason for me to sacrifice short-term happiness in my life, definitely I would not ever do that to somebody else. So even Elon Musk, who I admire to no end, and half the reason I studied what I did was because of Elon Musk. There are situations where he treats other people in his company not in the way that I would admire.
I've heard of that from people very close to him.
Now, the other person I admire to no end is Alexander Hamilton, right? And both him and Arnold cheated on their wives. Hate it. I can't stand that. But I admire the person even outside of those flaws. And so I admire the things about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk outside of those flaws.
How do you, with a person who exceeds most human level expectations, practice that kindness and compassion with employees?
Oh, it's so easy. So there's three things I look for when I hire people. I look for people who have technical excellence, but even more than that, I really look for people who are super fast learners. I don't care if you already know the tech stack. What I care is that you can demonstrate to me that you can learn it really fast. Number two, I look for fire in the belly for the product and the team. And number three, I look for loyalty. If I have all those things in someone, I will move mountains to make sure that they can work for us. It doesn't matter what is the obstacle. If you don't know the tech stack, I will personally sit down and teach you that thing, or I will give you a documentation to learn how to do it or a video to learn how to do it. And I'll give you small challenges that match your ability, and I'll help you grow to the level where you can be exceptional. And I think one of the reasons why people love working with us is they feel that the output that they can do while working with me and the rest of the team is 5x what they could do by themselves or in another company, because we help people level up so quickly. Now, Steve Jobs and Elon Musk had these crazy deadlines. And they're working towards these deadlines. And they believe that by squeezing people, by shouting at them, by putting these in them in a negative environment, they're going to get the most out of that person. Realistically, that was possible back then because there were very few engineers and very few good companies to work at. But if you do that today, people will just leave, because why would you want to work with an asshole?
100%.
Now, it's just the most in-demand position. And so they have options not to work with people who treat them like that. And so realistically, you're just going to lose these people that you spend so much time cultivating. In addition, it's just I can't do that. I don't get mad at people. For sure. Yeah.
Cliff, I had a lot of fun.
I'm so energized, honestly.
I am about to, I was exhausted before you came in, and I'm about to go conquer the world.
That's what I like to hear. Go read some books.
I have a feeling most people listening aren't used to hearing people like you. If you listen to this and you aren't hyped, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
I really don't. I really hope that you could find it in your heart to listen to it again. All right, Cliff, tell the people how to find you on the interweb, baby.
Perfect. So easiest places to find me are Instagram, YouTube, and Medium. Cliff Weitzman, CliffWeitzman. And most importantly, go check out Speechify. Speech and then IFY. You can find it on the Apple or Android app stores. You can use it on your Mac or your website.
Right. What's the use case?
So you're on the web. You sent me a PDF that I'm supposed to read. It's like a contract for something. Click share to Speechify, and boom, I can start listening. So first I need to download the app. And even if it's complicated in the footnotes, you can crop the footnotes out. You can connect it to Google Drive. You can connect it to Dropbox. Really, anything is readable. And even if you really don't have it in digital format, you can literally take a picture and it'll take it 2 seconds and it'll convert it into digital text for you.
That's amazing.
So even if you handed me a document to look at earlier today, it's 10 pages long, 10 pictures, and I can listen to it. And then you can play with the voices. You can change the speed. It's life-changing.
Oh, how much does it cost?
It's free. So you can get it for 100% free.
$3.99, baby.
Yeah. $3.99. And then if you...
Is that a 5-finger discount, baby?
Yeah. And so it's free to use, unlimited listening, whatever you want. If you want slightly higher quality voices, that are the voices that come from our servers, then you pay.
Are we talking the upsell, baby?
This is the upsell. So the upsell. So that subscription is $140 per year. And so
it's free.
Yeah. If you think about how much time it saves you, because you sent me 3 articles to read on the way here. I just read them in the car. I just like shared them to Speechify. I got in the car. I drove the 30 minutes it takes to get here. I finished them like while driving. Otherwise, I wouldn't need to spend 30 minutes beforehand. So it'll save you definitely more than 5 hours per week. So
anyway, is there any other way that we need to get a hold of you? Because I want to make sure we get everything in.
Yeah. Hey, if you guys have any questions about how to use Speechify, or you're just curious and you're like, oh my God, I want to learn more about this kid, go to Cliff Weitzman at Instagram and just send me a message. Or you can.
Is that the best way to get a hold of you, like personally?
Yeah, just send me a personal message on Instagram, or you can send me an email at cliff@getspeechify.com.
That's
okay. Yeah, he uses Speechify, so he has time to meet with all you people.
Yeah, exactly. It's super, like this is the great thing is like if you recommend a book to me, like my reading list is not scarce. Like
have you read The Alchemist?
I have read The Alchemist.
I love that book.
I don't think
I'm reading it right now.
I think you just end at have you read?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to give a final. You have never, if somebody, it's either their first 5 books or their last 5 books. What are the 5 books, Cliff?
Okay. So the easiest books to usually start reading is Shoe Dog, which is the book about the founder, Phil Knight of Nike. The reason why it's such a great book to start is it's written really well. It's like a travel novel, but it's also a business book and a biography all rolled into one. So that's the first one I would recommend. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a great book about financing. I would also read The 4-Hour Workweek. The author comes off as a jerk in the first like 2 chapters, but stick out and ends up being really, really valuable. If you're into fantasy books, I highly recommend The Name of the Wind or Way of Kings. Favorite books of all time. Outliers is pretty good. It really depends on what category of book you're like. How to Win Friends by Dale Carnegie is like a must read. I read it every year.
Okay, now what is the best book ever written?
It depends on how you define the word best.
What's your favorite book ever?
The Way of Kings. The main character Kaladin is like the best leader I've ever encountered, and the rights to this movie were just sold, and I'm trying very hard to get to play the role of Kaladin in the movie. So we'll see if that happens.
Manifest it into existence.
Yeah, this part of where the man bun comes. That's actually part of where the man bun comes from. Is I'm trying to look more like Kaladin.